Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. And just to make sure you are in the right place, this is a webinar on how a green bank can drive the North Carolina clean energy economy. We'll be kind of talking a little bit about a report that we just put out, but also about some additional opportunities that are coming up. I am Jen Weiss from the Nicholas Institute, and in just a few minutes, I will introduce the rest of my team. But before we did that, just wanted to give you a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, as you can see, and we will be sharing the recording after the webinar. We will also share the slides with you. So we will send those out and also have them available on our website. There are an awful lot of people on this webinar, so we're going to mute all of your lines, but please, that we really encourage your questions. Please use the chat box for your questions throughout the webinar, and we've reserved some time at the end to have a robust discussion, a Q&A discussion at the end. So thank you again for joining us. We're really looking forward to sharing our analysis with you and to share the opportunities for a green bank in North Carolina. And at the end, we will share some exciting news. There we go. First, the agenda. Very quickly, we want to do a welcome and introduction from Sushma Mazemore from Department of Environmental Quality. Then we're going to do a little Green Bank 101. For those of you that might not be familiar with what a green bank is, we wanted to give you a little background on what they are and what they can do. Then we'll dive right into North Carolina opportunities for a green bank and talk a little bit about some ideas on capitalization methods and perhaps the federal clean energy and sustainability accelerator that's in the works. And then we'll talk about steps forward, ending with a Q&A. So here's my team, and I have to say, these two have been so fabulous to work with. If you're not familiar with the Coalition for Green Capital, they're a nonprofit organization that's focused on accelerating the growth of clean energy markets through the creation of green banks, and they've set up quite a few, which they're going to tell you all about. But I am just honored to work with them, to learn from them as we've put together this project, and we've dived into the green bank and opportunities in North Carolina. So Hannah and Jill, thank you very much for being with me as part of this adventure. I am Jen Weiss. I'm a senior policy associate on the climate and energy team at Duke University's Nicholas Institute. For those of you that don't know about us, we are part of Duke University, and we work with decision makers to create timely, effective, economically practical solutions to questions, to things that are coming up. And certainly, the financing of clean energy is something that comes up quite a bit. So I'm excited today to talk a little bit more about some of those opportunities. But first, before we do that, I wanted to welcome someone who needs absolutely no introduction. I'm sure you all know her already. As many of you know, Sushma is the driving force behind many of the clean energy things that are going on in the state right now, especially the Clean Energy Plan, which she was the mastermind behind. So we are really thrilled to have her with us today to be welcoming you to this webinar. For those of you that don't know her, she is the Deputy Assistant Secretary and the State Energy Director at the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. And Sushma, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jen. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Okay, good. Hey, thank you, Jen, and welcome everybody. This is really exciting for me personally, as well as all of us who's been working so hard for the last couple of years to advance North Carolina's position in the nation. I remember when I first started working on U80, one of the first call I had was with Rick Collins, and I talked with the New York Green Banks folks. And back then, our conversations were so elementary and so at the infancy level. But I feel like we've grown a lot. We've understood where the need is, and it's exciting to see where things are headed with Jen's leadership. So I'm going to give a sort of like, from my perspective, why such a fund is so needed and a necessary step forward for North Carolina. As you all know, the Clean Energy Plan was launched in October 2019 as a response to Governor Cooper's directive to DEQ on Executive Order 80. It was a plan built out of a consensus process through a stakeholder engagement, listening to all of you, listening to many people across the state on what their vision for a 21st century energy system looks like. and all towards combating climate change and building a more prosperous clean energy economy for our state. And so as a result of that engagement, we set out 3 overarching goals. This particular initiative that you're going to hear about today it will position us to achieve at least 2 of those goals, and that is to reduce our electric power sector greenhouse gas emissions by 70% by 2030 and attain carbon neutrality by 2050. It will also help us accelerate clean energy innovation and development, and in order to deploy these resources and opportunities that creates a more of an economic opportunity for all the state, including our rural and urban areas. The Clean Energy Plan, as you saw, there were 6 categories, and within each category, there are recommendations. There were a total of 45 or so recommendations and about 80 action items. The category called Clean Energy Deployment and Economic Development contained a recommendation called Enabling Customers to Choose Clean Energy and Increasing Customer Access to Clean Energy. And there were a variety of recommendations under that topic, but particularly one called under F3 was to develop a green energy bank or a statewide clean energy fund that would catalyze the development and expand clean energy markets. And the vision behind that was connecting private capital with project developers and project customers, both at the state level, local level, and the private and public sector. And we also envisioned that such a recommendation would involve and require leadership from the governor's office, the governor himself, from academia and local government. And I'm excited to hear all of that come to fruition in less than a year. We have a lot more work to do. But Jen and her team have basically carried out this recommendation F3. And I'm really looking forward to it because already we have identified so many places where this kind of funding mechanism is ripe for action. And some of the examples are, using this capital dollars to for projects in areas and markets that currently are not attractive or not even an option for North Carolinians. It can simultaneously spur new businesses and projects that would help our local economy, but bring renewable energy and energy efficiency options to those that it might not be available. It can be used as a financing mechanism for building out our electric vehicle infrastructure, as well as other means for reducing emissions and building energy resiliency in both public and private building sector. But most of all, I see this as an opportunity to particularly serve the need in rural and poorer communities that may otherwise lack access to the necessary capital. So in conclusion, I think this Clean Energy Fund project and all it offers can support our vision for a cleaner, greener, and more sustainable North Carolina, particularly related to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and building a more resilient and a clean economy for our state. Thanks, Jen.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sushma, for just being visionary and behind us the whole way and supporting us. This is incredible. So next up, Hannah is going to talk to you through a little bit of Green Bank 101. Take it away, Hannah.
Awesome. So before we dive into the opportunities and impacts that Sushma mentioned on reducing emissions and creating jobs and other positive impacts, we'll first do just a quick review on what green banks are. So green banks are essentially clean energy investment funds. They use financial tools to increase sustainable investment. They bring together commercial, public, and mission-driven capital in order to make financial products that increase investment. And the key part here is that the capital is mission-driven, which allows those green banks to offer financing often at lower rates or longer terms than projects would otherwise be able to find. So this creates additionality in the market, expanding investment to projects that otherwise wouldn't make it to development. Alongside that investment, green banks also provide technical expertise, and they work with local partners to break down barriers and connect projects with capital. So as we'll see in upcoming slides, not all barriers are a lack of access to capital, but rather business problems that require technical assistance to find those solutions. Beyond all this, green banks use methods that catalyze greater overall investment, meaning that they use their mission-driven capital to draw in more private investment to expand the clean energy market overall. And Jen, if you could click to the next slide. So this map reflects a decade's worth of experience. Collectively, these 15 green banks have driven over $5 billion of investment. And as you can see in the top left-hand corner, with approximately $3 of private capital flowing into each project for every $1 of green bank capital used. Next slide. So green banks are necessary because there are many, many barriers to clean energy deployment, which, as I mentioned, are not just a lack of access to capital, but also technical assistance and business problems, or the necessity of increasing project demand. So to pick out a few of these, some barriers include, over in the top right, perceived credit risk for low and moderate income households due to a lack of credit history, which then blocks these households from accessing commercial loans. Despite the fact that low-income communities often have disproportionately high energy costs and are disproportionately affected by harmful emissions, yet they are often the last to access the benefits and savings from clean energy. Another barrier is small projects not providing sufficient scale to attract private investment, which keeps those commercial and residential owners from saving on their energy bill. And finally, a general barrier is that off-the-shelf financing terms often don't match the project lifetime, which can then result in negative cash flow due to the debt rate or term being mismatched. Jen, if you would click the next slide. So these problems can be solved by a green bank who is dedicated to knocking down barriers for faster and cheaper clean energy market growth, with a focus specifically on equitable deployment. So some financing solutions include, over on the left-hand side, using the green bank's mission-driven capital to offer lower rates or longer terms to better match a project's cash flows, or using alternative underwriting criteria or credit enhancements to address households with limited credit history in order to then bring clean energy benefits to low and moderate income communities. Or a financing solution for small projects is for a green bank to standardize, aggregate, and warehouse those projects. So essentially, those projects can be bundled and then sold into the private market, which allows small commercial or residential owners to access the clean energy savings that they need. And then over on the right side, some market creation strategies to overcome barriers can include acting as a first mover to spark deals that require collective action, or partnering with businesses to create and train a massive new clean energy workforce, or employing innovative structures like CPACE, commercial property assessed clean energy, and on-bill finance products to expand access. So I know we ran through those quickly, but this just covers what a green bank is and what kinds of products might be created. So I'll hand it back to Jen so that we can talk through some of the specifics of the opportunities and impact a green bank could have in North Carolina.
Wonderful. Thank you, Hannah. So now that we're all up to speed with what a green bank is and what it can do, wanted to talk a little bit about our process. As Sushma mentioned, the green bank was a recommendation in the North Carolina Clean Energy Plan. It was also a recommendation in two other parallel processes going on at the same time in 2019, the Energy Efficiency Roadmap, as well as the Department of Transportation's Zero Emission Vehicle Plan. And so from those three stakeholder-driven processes, we really felt it was a good time for us to dig into what a green bank could look like for North Carolina. So in the fall of 2019, the Nicholas Institute partnered with the Coalition for Green Capital to do a stakeholder engagement process to really understand what these barriers are. Hannah put a whole bunch out there, and we wanted to understand, were these the barriers that North Carolina was seeing? Were there other barriers that there might be here? Why were certain types of clean energy and energy efficiency projects not being funded? Where are those gaps? And so we did a really robust stakeholder engagement process to understand that. And then from there, we came up with some green bank solutions that we felt would be opportunities for North Carolina to take advantage of to overcome some of these barriers and to really drive drive the clean energy market. And then last month in October, we published the report, which is available on our website, and also I can send it out if you have not seen it, but it is really an outline of what these opportunities look like and what our path forward is to make a green bank successful in North Carolina. So quickly, I wanted to talk about a couple of the roles that we found for green banks in North Carolina. And this is a lot based on the barriers that we heard when we talked to the stakeholders, as well as some of the barriers that Hannah just outlined. We found 4 basic roles, and I'm not going to go through them in too much detail, but really we wanted you to know that the green bank doesn't play just one financing role, it can play multiple types of roles. And so one of the roles that we heard loud and clear was this role of a connector. And this could be for maybe something that's a first of kind transaction, maybe a new technology, or it could even be for maybe where there's a lack of staff capacity to be doing some financing. And so a green bank can offer technical assistance, should kind of be a matchmaker between the financing that's available and the people that need it. And so one of the roles we really want to focus in on for North Carolina is this connector role. A second role goes back to that perceived project risk. We feel the green bank can play a large role in a risk mitigator in North Carolina by offering credit enhancements, whether that's a loan loss reserve or it's an interest rate buy down, just something to make the more traditional lenders, private investors, have a feeling of reduced project risk and invest more into the clean energy markets. A third role is a direct lender, maybe where there are marginal economics that is not attracting the capital in the first place. And in these cases, we can be a co-investor, maybe taking a junior position or a senior position to improve the overall economics of the project and make it attractive. And then finally, the last role, as Hannah was saying, we could play an aggregator or a warehousing role. Take projects that are smaller, maybe residential weatherization projects, and build them, maybe they have lower efficiencies of scale, and build them into a block or scale them up so it makes sense for a private investor to invest in them. Did want to provide a couple of examples on these. These are ones that came directly from our stakeholder engagement. In the connector role, we felt like we could offer assistance for on-bill tariff programs for electric cooperatives or municipal utilities, really building out that functionality that we know can work across the state. Or perhaps it would be to support cities in developing their energy efficiency and clean energy projects. This would be connecting them with the financing that's available to help them meet their specific goals. In the risk mitigator role, it could be something as easy as helping traditional lenders grow their own energy efficiency offerings, maybe by offering one of those credit enhancements that I discussed. Or it could be expanding existing programs that are successful and do a great job in the market, but maybe don't have enough funding to do all of the great things they want to do. And a good example is the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, who has a number of affordable housing programs that are very successful. The Green Bank could help to expand those programs and help them do even more. In the direct lender role, we could offer energy efficiency lending in agriculture. Agriculture, and you'll hear about it in just a second, is one of the areas that we've found a huge gap in financing for. And so we want to help to be that bridge to help get the farms the funding that they need. Or it could be to electrify transit and school bus fleets. We saw a huge opportunity for the electrification of buses. And so the Green Bank could help to advance that. And then finally, in the bundler role, just a couple of examples could be a heat pump water heater program or other energy efficient residential equipment loans, where we could just bundle a lot of them together and sell them on the secondary market. But rather than have me talk about all of these, I think it's better to have some of our outstanding stakeholders. And so I'd like to invite these 3 wonderful people to just talk a little bit about the opportunities that they see from their perspective of how a Green Bank could help. I will quickly introduce them and then let them speak. Ajulo Othau is the founder and CEO of Enter Wealth Solutions. Amber Weaver is the Sustainability Officer at the City of Asheville. And Terry Albrecht is the Director of Waste Reduction Partners. Thank you, all 3 of you. And we'll kick it off with Ajulo.
Hi, thank you so much, Jennifer. I just want to talk a little bit about the particular role that the Clean Energy Fund could play, specifically with the rural electric cooperatives in our state. As you know, they are operating in 93 of the 100 counties in our state. mostly rural, many of which are persistently poor counties. And because they are independent and governed by a board, they're able to take on innovative projects and approaches, but at the same time, they're small and often have the capacity, just enough capacity to carry out the core functions of their business, which is to buy and sell electricity, without being able to take on much more than that operationally or financially. And so the Clean Energy Fund could play a really critical role in helping these types of organizations to experiment and to potentially pivot to new lines of business. And so support for those retail electric cooperatives, as well as support for the statewide organization, the Electric Cooperative Membership, the North Carolina Electric Membership Corporation, excuse me, as well as the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, is really important connection role that the Clean Energy Fund could play in helping retail cooperatives, again, to experiment with new strategies. And so I'm looking forward to hopefully supporting some strategic partnerships with these organizations at the local level, as well as the statewide entity in particular, and working to also elevate the stories of electric cooperatives that are already engaged in really innovative work, like the Roanoke Electric Cooperative out in northeastern North Carolina, that is undertaking clean energy technology. They're deploying solar and battery storage projects. They're also engaging in tariff on-bill financing for beneficial electrification, as well as for energy efficiency upgrades. And so these are the kinds of things that I think that the Clean Energy Fund could help to do, particularly with rural electric cooperatives in our state.
Fantastic. And I 100% agree with you, Adjula. Those are all really wonderful projects. And thank you for taking the lead on all of those. Amber, are you on the line? She was calling in on a phone, so I may have to check on that. Terry, why don't we run to you, and then I will see if I can get Amber's line unmuted.
Sure. Thank you, Jen. So Jen asked me to speak a little about some of the work we do and the potential project opportunities. So I run a group called Waste Reduction Partners. It's a team of retired engineers that are across the state. And we actively do energy assessments across all non-residential sectors. But I wanted to talk specifically about small business and ag. And so since about 2012, we've worked very closely with the USDA and their Rural Energy for America program called REAP to do energy assessments in the ag and small business sector, all rural North Carolina, to help those entities identify energy efficiency projects, as well as apply for some very limited grant funding that's available through USDA. So just a little bit of sector size. North Carolina, we've got over 100,000 rural small businesses. We have somewhere in the order of 46,000 farms. So those numbers might be a few years old, but so there's a mass scale there. Since 2015, our group has done about 140 on-site energy assessments at small businesses and at these rural small business and ag sectors. We've identified over $4.4 million in annual energy project opportunities. And yet those businesses really only received somewhere in the order of less than $500,000 of USDA funding to help get them there. There's a matching grant that they can apply for. So in our estimation, we have at least just out of that subset of 140 of the 100,000 rural small businesses, we see there's at least $23 million of energy project investment there that could be supported, that we make an estimation of. So I think a green bank's going to really help that, whether it's through the assistance or, direct loans or support of more marginal loans in general. And those projects range across the map. In ag, it might be center pivot irrigation systems for a farm or poultry house upgrades. It may be refrigeration or other more common commercial upgrades in HVAC and lighting and those kinds of things. So I think there's definitely a mass amount of opportunity, especially in the rural areas served by co-ops and municipals, where some of the more direct, say Duke Energy, investor-owned utility programs are not supporting projects in those areas.
Great, thanks, Terry. Yeah, there really is a lot of opportunity in the agriculture sector. That's exciting to be thinking about and to help move forward. Thank you for all of your work on that. We're going to try Amber again. Amber, are you able to unmute?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Yay, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting a municipal perspective on the benefits of green banks. The City of Asheville Office of Sustainability has been working with Jen Weiss in a couple of different ways over several years around green banks. And through the Environmental Defense Fund Cities Initiative, there's been a collaborative of cities, many, I'm assuming, Jennifer, that were part of the stakeholder group that have said and talked about what our needs are when it comes to both energy efficiency and renewable energy goals that some of our municipal operations have set out. In addition to that, a couple years ago, Buncombe County and the City of Asheville worked on a 100% renewable energy roadmap. And in both of these settings, we continue to hear the need of having additional financing for, again, renewable energy, low moderate income projects, weatherization, and energy efficiency. And what green banks will also help us do in that area is focus on and actually, hopefully, potentially work on CPACE, the Property Assessed Clean Energy program, which is something that is across the nation, but we just haven't quite been able to figure that out here in the state of North Carolina. Some of those needs around having a central place, such as a green bank, to help us implement a program like CPACE, is the need to have that technical assistance that was described a bit earlier for both community members as well as our local municipal communities to be able to lean on when it comes to, like, how do you want to deploy this? Where is the capital coming from? You know, for the City of Asheville anyway, you know, we are a smaller city. I like to remind people that we're really only 90,000, population of 90,000, 92,000. So, you know, if you put that in perspective to some of these other states and larger cities that have been able to accomplish a CPACE program, you know, we just don't have the capital and the expertise and the technical assistance. Additionally, I think it's just important to have those programs available when we have 100% renewable energy community-wide goals. It's a big lift for municipalities, and I think having all the partners at the table is what's going to help us to see those ambitious goals and come to fruition. Something else that was mentioned, but I also think is extremely important just to underscore, is the need for weatherization. And our city has had grants through the Urban Sustainability Directors Network and the Southeast Sustainability Directors Network to help with weatherization programs, but the need is so vast. And I think to have a green bank, and again, the support of a green bank and someone to kind of help provide that technical assistance to municipalities to continue to work and focus on energy efficiency and LMI communities is what's going to be really important, and what in a meaningful way, right? So, like, when I think about renewable energy goals, I think that many times we need to make that goal something that's applicable to everyone. And when we talk to our BIPOC frontline communities, that's a distant thought. It's a distant thought. So I think it's our goal to be able to help with weatherization and energy efficiency to move all of our communities forward towards this really large, ambitious goal of renewable energy.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amber. And thank you for all your leadership in that field. You guys have been driving that for quite some time, and we really do appreciate all your work. So thank you to the three of you. And these are incredible opportunities that Ajulo, Amber, and Terry just outlined, but there's many more. And so you can see what a benefit a green bank or a clean energy fund is going to bring to our state in many different respects. Quickly, I wanted to talk about kind of what our plan forward is. So we have set as a target for the North Carolina Clean Energy Fund $100 million target. If we get that amount in the fund, we believe that we have the funds to stimulate the economy, to help us get towards a just energy transition, and help with greenhouse gas reductions. And so it's really, really important as we are thinking through our potential pipeline and what we want to invest in from the North Carolina Clean Energy Fund, that we keep those three tenets in mind. As you all know, due to COVID, North Carolina lost a significant number of clean energy work jobs. I think as of July, it was approximately 19%. While some of that has come back, it hasn't fully come back. And so we believe, based on what we've seen in other green banks, that with this $100 million in seed capital, North Carolina could create 15,000 jobs in the first 5 years with no other state policy changes. So can you imagine what it could do with some of these other things that the state is considering doing? This is just on its own. Definitely, as we said, green banks are mission-based. We want to have programs that are specifically focused on low-income and frontline communities. Amber just talked about a lot of opportunities there. Ajulo talked about some as well. There are a lot of opportunities for us to help these communities that maybe in the past haven't gotten the accessibility to financing that they need. And then finally, I would be remiss if I didn't say that a clean energy fund could help with emissions reductions. As Sushma outlined, we've got some incredible goals in North Carolina to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, and the Green Bank can play a significant role in helping to make that happen. So how do we move this forward? How do we get this 100 million to start this Green Bank? I'm going to turn it over to Jill now, and she's going to talk a little bit about a couple of opportunities.
Great, thanks, Jen. So hello, everyone. I'm Jill Bunting. I'm the Deputy Director of the Coalition for Green Capital. Hannah and I are just thrilled to be here talking to you all about the work that we've been doing with Jen and you all on the ground in North Carolina. And it's just been fantastic to be in the state and working with you. So Jen threw out that big number, 100 million for a North Carolina Green Bank, which sort of begs the obvious question of where will that actually come from? And so what I can tell you is in our work around the country, setting up green banks, we've worked with states to identify kind of a broad range of funding options, and that can include state budget appropriations. Sometimes that can include like greenhouse gas, like RGGI dollars, things like that. Sometimes there's parts of philanthropy that will step in for a piece of that. So that's to say there's kind of a broad range of options for how a state green bank were to put together its initial source of seed capital. The challenge with that is it's really hard to pull together funding in kind of a piecemeal manner. And it's not just hard to get it done, it's really, really hard to get it done quickly. There's really never enough money and there's never enough time. So one thing I wanted to highlight in this webinar is that we're thinking about Pathway for North Carolina. There's a new source of funding potentially available at the federal level, which is the Clean Energy and Sustainability Accelerator. This is a concept right now where the federal government would make a one-time appropriation to a new nonprofit called the Clean Energy and Sustainability Accelerator. That central entity would then be available to turn around and make money available to local green banks like in North Carolina. And that funding would cover both startup costs and also capital for investments. As Hannah described, the state green bank would then marry that federal money with private sector investment, and that would thus increase the overall investment in clean energy in the state. Jen, can you go to the next slide? Great. So what kinds of projects are we talking about here? Sort of what's in the wheelhouse of the accelerator? So there's 7 broad sectors that are outlined in the legislation right now, and that includes renewable energy, buildings, the grid, transportation, industry, forestry and agriculture, and resiliency. And I think this sort of diversity of sectors is different from a lot of federal and state programs, and that it really reflects the fact that we can't solve climate change, we can't increase equitable access to energy by just focusing on one thing. We really need a sort of a portfolio approach. And we can't realize the job the full job potential or deliver environmental justice without addressing industry or resiliency. And so that's why the Accelerator is authorized to finance activities across a broad range of sectors, ensuring that every community can benefit. Great. So we've talked a little about the importance of equity as a sort of core tenet of what green banks do, and that's absolutely at the core of what the Accelerator would do as well. The frontline communities have suffered disproportionate harms from climate change and generally been an afterthought for climate investment and related job and wealth creation. The Accelerator will reverse this paradigm to really put frontline job creation first. And right now, the goal is to have the Accelerator ring fence 40% of its investments to make sure that those funds flow to disadvantaged communities that create jobs and lower energy costs in those places. So I think one obvious question here is, why am I talking about something theoretical? Can we really get something done in divided government? And I want to just highlight a couple green shoots that sort of make us, at least at CGC, optimistic about something like this moving forward as we look into the future in 2021. First, I would just point out that in the past, congressional support has been massive, and we expect this to be a priority in both next Congress and next presidency. The Senate bill that passed was sponsored by Vice President-elect Harris, along with Senators Markey, Van Hollen, and Blumenthal. The House bill was led by Debbie Gingle, and in fact, the House bill passed twice in 2020 alone. Again, this bill has already passed 2 times in 6 months, and that called for a $35 billion appropriation to the Clean Energy Fund. It also has the support of House leadership, and it was included in the climate crisis report, as well as in the Senate Democrats' own climate crisis report. So this is not just a Democratic issue, though. Support extends sort of far beyond Capitol Hill. You can see some of the names of the organizations that have signed letters of endorsement over the summer. And in fact, over 100 organizations have now signed at this point. And it's not just that it's supported by folks in Congress and sort of environmental groups on the ground. We've done polling that finds close to 7 in 10 voters, including majorities in both parties, have supported the funding of the National Climate Bank to create jobs. In general, green banks have been an area of bipartisan agreement in most of the states that we've worked in, and we think that there's a huge opening for something like this to move forward as part of a stimulus discussion in 2021. So in terms of the work that we're doing right now, across the country, there are stakeholders, just like in North Carolina, working together to set up green banks to potentially receive funding from the source. And they're talking to their officials and other folks in the state about what the Accelerator could do for them. If getting that kind of elevating those sorts of voices and those stories is going to be critical for getting passage of something like this. And if it's something that you're interested in being part of, please get in touch with us. We'll have our contact information available at the end. Thanks very much.
Great, thanks, Jill. Yeah, there's a lot of great opportunities. I love to see the maps lighting up like that with all of the states that are interested in it. I will say, though, that we are ahead of the game, I think. I'm just going to pat ourselves on the back. So my big news, I wanted to talk about where are we now. So my big news is that we did file with the Secretary of State's office in North Carolina, the Articles of Incorporation for a nonprofit here in North Carolina to be the North Carolina Clean Energy Fund. So those have been filed, and we are working on setting up a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have established a founding board of directors that will meet in December to approve bylaws, nominate additional members, board members, and develop a business plan. And I'll talk a little bit more about those board members in just a moment. We are starting to gather support for the Clean Energy Fund and the National Clean Energy Accelerator that Jill was just talking about from a broad group. And we encourage you to help us with that support. If you have an interest in giving us a letter of support or joining a group with a letter of support, please get in touch with us because we really want to build the excitement and the enthusiasm behind this. We're starting to develop a pipeline of projects and to get them ready for when we do get the funding to move forward. And again, if you have ideas for projects, please get in touch with us. We want to talk through the different project ideas that you have so that we can get some things ready to go. And then finally, we are doing fundraising in the event that the Accelerator does not come to pass in the near future. We will be working on other ways to fund this. So this is going to move forward in some form. There may be different ways that we are going to fund it, but we are working towards that. And then finally, we want to work on hiring a staff, probably an executive director and maybe an administrative support sometime in 2021. So here is our founding board. You'll recognize a couple familiar faces on here. Actually, probably all of them are familiar to some of you. Wanted to first say how excited I am about this board. These are three, I'm going to say three because one of them is me, three creative, smart, and visionary leaders that I'm just really excited to be kicking off this adventure with. Ajulo, who you have already met, Melissa Malcolm Weber from the Self-Help Credit Union, and Tyler Norris from Cypress Creek Renewables. Again, I'm excited about starting this journey with them because I believe they are very visionary and are going to bring a lot of their expertise to the table and help us get down the right path with a clean energy fund. But now I wanted to invite Melissa, who has kindly offered to talk a little bit about her role on the board, just to speak to all of you. Melissa?
Thanks, Jen, and thanks everybody for being here. So when Jen asked me to serve on the founding board, I said yes in a heartbeat because the North Carolina Clean Energy Fund can help fill financing gaps that are preventing important work from getting done now. When I think about the impact that a clean energy fund can have, what's front of mind for me is the urgency of addressing energy disparities. Recent work from ACEEE shows us that if you're a low and moderate income family or you're a person of color, you're more likely to pay over 6% of your paycheck towards your home energy bill. And during COVID, that power bill is also the link to your kid being able to participate in remote schooling. So energy efficiency and health and safety investments in homes aren't charity. They're crucial investments in the education of North Carolina's future workforce, investments in community health, and they're even investments in the health of the electric grid. And I bet all of you who are on this webinar also have ideas about needed financing solutions because anybody who's listening to this webinar has likely served on advisory panels, attended workshops, and really helped lay the groundwork for climate resilience in North Carolina. There's been so much effort over the years to find ways to extend clean energy and energy efficiency as the economic engines in the state, and then to distribute those benefits equitably. We are so lucky to have this really vibrant set of institutions that help build the clean energy and energy efficiency sector. Trade associations like NCCEF and the North Carolina Building Performance Association, advocacy groups from the mainstream to those who hold our feet to the fire. University-based centers like the Nicholas Institute and the Center for Energy Research at A&T. So I'm really honored to be in the esteemed company here on this founding board and working with Ajula Otho and Tyler Norris and Jen Weiss. They're creative, they're practical, I'll say I'm personally inspired. And we're going to give our very best for the people of North Carolina.
Wonderful. See why she's on the board? Thank you. We're so excited to have you on the board with us, Melissa, and Ajulo and Tyler. We're just really excited to get this kicked off. So I'm going to wrap this up by saying, here are some of the steps forward for the North Carolina Clean Energy Fund. We'll call it that. I'm going to switch over from calling it a green bank. So this is the North Carolina Clean Energy Fund. We have set up the board. We are going to start working on the pipeline of projects, but we need your support. As Melissa just said, so many of you are so actively involved in the state, in the clean energy sector, in the energy efficiency sector, in the finance sectors, academic sectors. We would love your support through letters of interest or pipeline examples. If you have examples of projects that you think are ready for funds, once we have them, please reach out to us. We are going to continue to develop the institution itself, the nonprofit, and its business plan. But we look forward to hearing more from all of you. I'm going to open it up now for questions. Please feel free to put them into the chat. But again, reach out to me, reach out to any of the board members, reach out to Coalition for Green Capital if you have any ideas, any questions about how this can help North Carolina. I want to thank again my team, Jill Bunting and Hannah Beinecke. They've just been incredible. It's been wonderful to work with it. And thank you to all of the stakeholders that have been involved so far. And thank you to all of you for joining the webinar today. It shows your interest, and there's a tremendous number of people on the line today, and that just really is incredible. So thank you for joining us today, and let's take some questions. All right, let's see. There was a question on the Volkswagen lawsuit, but I think we could take that one offline, Maple. I think there's a little bit of information that we can provide on VW itself. But the point of the Green Bank is one of the things that we can think about doing is being an addition to the VW settlement. So if the VW settlement were to be able to fund part of a new electric school bus, for example, maybe the Green Bank could help with that additional part. So that's that co-investment type of idea that we'd be looking to do. How to resonating, yes, for weatherization. Yes, definitely weatherization is going to be a part of what the Green Bank does. There's a question about
Jen.
whether, yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I'm on the phone, so I don't know. I don't know about, when to take a turn. So Amber Weaver from the city of Asheville, and I think that there would be many cities that want to write a letter of support or participate in any way, shape, or form. How would you envision us doing that would be most beneficial to this cause?
Jill, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's kind of two options. And I think the first one probably makes the most sense is if you're a city that's interested in this, why don't you just shoot us a note after this and we can talk to you about whether it makes sense for you to write one as a standalone, or we can sort of bring a group of cities together to sign off on one. In some of the states that we're working on, we've kind of taken both approaches, and some people have customized it more, and some people have sort of signed on as a bigger group. Both are great options. So yeah, let's just take that offline. But I would just say that kind of demonstrated interest on the ground is just hugely helpful for the institution. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about it more.
Yeah, thanks, Jill, and thanks for the question, Amber. That was a great question. I'm hoping there's going to be broad support, but we can certainly do it in different ways. And let's talk those through. That's definitely interesting to us. I want to thank Mac for putting a link to the Green Bank report in there. I did not do that, so thank you, Mac, for putting that into the chat box for anybody that's interested. There was a question about whether there's a mechanism for a non-North Carolina small business to apply for Green Bank funds to have North Carolina academia peer review a clean energy innovation. So I think what Joseph is asking is there maybe funding available to connect new innovations with academia? And I don't know, have you seen that happen, Jill or Hannah, in the past?
Yeah, so typically the Green Banks sort of work on the commercialization end of the clean energy development process. So they're sort of less involved in technologies that are just kind of getting off the ground or in the pilot stage, and they're more looking at how you can sort of take things that have already been proven in that part of the development pipeline and how you get them to scale. It's come up in a couple of other states that we've worked in. In Colorado, there's a lot of discussion about this, for example. And they haven't yet designed sort of a program that focuses on innovation. But if it was sort of a locus of interest in a particular state, I think it could work well with the Green Bank model, depending on what kind of needs are on the ground.
Great, thanks, Jill. Mac asked a question about the PowerPoint being sent to the registrant. Yes, I will send out the PowerPoint as well as a link to the recording. Please feel free to share it with anyone that was unable to make the call today. And if they are interested in getting in touch with us about some support, please have them do that as well. Sophie asked a question about whether a Green Bank would be able to help finance low to moderate income solar projects. Definitely. Jill or Hannah, you want to talk about any examples you've seen?
Yeah, I would mention just the experience that the Connecticut Green Bank has had in this market. They really pioneered the sort of Green Bank interventions in the LMI solar market. And it's not an accident that because of their work, Connecticut's a beyond parity state in solar. And by that, I mean that there's more penetration of solar for low and moderate income households than there is in high income households. And that's largely because they sort of created a suite of products that work directly on the low and moderate income solar installations. But across the board, there are Green Banks that are working on low and moderate income solar. In Maryland, there's a Green Bank called the Climate Access Fund, which is dedicated to increasing access to community solar projects as part of the state's commitment to broadening that market. Down in Florida, there's an organization called SELF, which is also focused on putting low and moderate income solar up and sort of combining that with some roof repair and weatherization, sort of innovative program. Which is all to say there's sort of examples all over the country, and I think it could be a great fit for the North Carolina market.
Yeah, great. And Sophie, if you have ideas, please forward them our way. We'd love to talk to you more about them. I did get a question sent to me that was, I think it was just sent to me, so I'll read it. It's, would you require the affordable housing that you fund to be all electric? And I mean, I don't think that is necessarily something that we would require. I think as the board puts together our business plan and our criteria for what types of project to select, we'll be considering that, but certainly aren't ruling out anything at this point. That is all the questions I see. Does anybody on the phone have a question, or anybody want to ask a question live?
Maybe on that point about technology screens, I would just add that usually in green banks, we see fewer like negative screens, saying things that they say they won't do, and more sort of positive screens, so areas of focus. And the purpose of that is to keep the pipeline fairly broad and open-ended to stakeholders, while the green bank sort of articulates what its priorities are to the market and sort of uses the screening process in that way.
Yep, really good point. I do have a question from Brian about, is there another state bank that stands out as a close match to what you envision for North Carolina?
Yeah, there are several green banks that have been created as nonprofits that are actually also called blank clean energy funds. So I think North Carolina is in good company there. I would point out to the examples of Nevada and Colorado, and particularly Colorado. The Colorado Clean Energy Fund was started as a nonprofit, but is sort of connected to the priorities of the energy office there and into government. Has a board that looks very similar to the board in North Carolina. They've really focused on, they have an active CPACE market in the state, which I know is different than North Carolina. But they've really focused on this gap in CPACE where there are sort of smaller projects that aren't getting funded by some of the larger CPACE developers. So that's been their first product line. And as we sort of heard from stakeholders in North Carolina, it sounds like a similar experience of focusing on small and mid-sized projects might be a good fit for something for the state as well.
Whoops, sorry, did not mean to do that. Sorry. So there was a question from Sushma about regarding the Accelerator. What is the anticipated amount of seed fund expected for North Carolina, or would it be formula-based if you know?
Yeah, great question. So this is all being, will be figured out in the final legislative details. I can tell you sort of some of the concepts that are being talked about right now. And the short answer is yes, the idea is that it would be something, there'd be a percentage of the overall money that's given to the Accelerator that'd be allocated to the states, something like 60% of the overall money. And then within that 60%, it would be distributed to the states on a formula basis, probably based on population is the going theory right now, though that might change a little bit.
Great, thank you. And then Daniel has a question about specifically about financing commercial, public sector, multifamily energy efficiency. What is the mechanism to be paid back? ESPC style, not sure what you mean by that, unless you mean energy savings corporation style, or monthly fixed payments. So I'll start that one, Jill and Hannah, you can chime in. You know, I think that's up for consideration, right? We have not right now figured out exactly how these programs are going to run and how they're going to be paid back. I will say that they are going to be designed to be sustainable. So we are not giving out grants. We are actually lending, and we expect to make this green bank sustainable for the long run. Jill, anything you want to add?
No, that's great.
Let's see. So a lot of things about clean, yay clean. Dion suggests that maybe a letter from a broader cities initiative, and we can address one of the key priorities that's coming out of the cities initiative and how the Green Bank can help, which is a great idea, Dion. Kathy has a question about, do you have a list of criteria that would be helpful in a letter of support from a municipality or a county? Is there a deadline for providing that? That's something that Orange County can probably provide, but a little more guidance would be helpful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we have some model language that we can share with folks after this that other cities and municipalities have used, and that should be a good starting point for crafting that for folks.
Yeah, and what I can do is, as we start to get these templates and models together, we can put them on our website, and I'm sure Coalition for Green Capital will put it on there so that you will have access to them and you all will be able to use them. What other states in the South have moved forward on a green bank or are in the same phase of development as we are in North Carolina?
Yeah, I think North Carolina, as Jen said, is a little bit ahead of the curve in the South in developing a green bank. The other one in the South that comes to mind is Self, which I mentioned down in Florida. They've been in business, I think, for going on 8 years now. And there's sort of nascent green bank efforts in some other places. But North Carolina is sort of leading the way, at least in the Southeast so far.
Yes, let's do this, North Carolina. We got
Exactly.
this. I see a lot of thanks, a lot of clapping for the board, and yeah, Laura, I will put together some sort of sharing site for people to access. Any other questions, or Jill and Hannah, is there anything that we've missed that you want to add?
Not for me. I mean, we're just so excited about the energy enthusiasm that's coming out of North Carolina right now, from government to the new board to you all for attending this. It's really sort of a unique time and opportunity for the state, and we're just happy to be along for the ride.
Yeah, I would just echo that, and even just seeing how many people are on the line now and how many people have taken part in the stakeholder process and lended their support and their voices to this report and to us moving forward has been really exciting to see. So thank you all so much for your voices and for your support as well.
Fantastic. Well, with that, I am actually going to wrap it up, I think. But as I say, our names and our emails are right there. Please reach out to us. Please share your ideas. Please share your letters of interest. Please share your pipeline projects. Thank you all for joining us today and for your enthusiasm about the Clean Energy Fund. And we are really, really looking forward to making this happen here in North Carolina. Have a great afternoon.